So, hey, welcome back to the Aerospace Executive Podcast. I'm really happy to have my friend Dan Edwards with me. Dan is the president and CEO of Elliott Aviation. He took over a couple months ago, and he's doing a great job up there. I've known Dan for a couple years, going back to a prior company he was with. And Dan, happy to have you on. Thanks for being here today.
So great to be with you, Craig.
So, sunny Moline, Illinois today, negative 12 degrees.
Yeah, it is beautiful and sunny and just balmy. We're getting after it.
So, gotcha. So hey, look, you come with a great. I mean, obviously, I see the KC-10 in the background and the picture in the background. So you come with a great aviation background from the Air Force, and then you've been, you're CEO of a company before, taking over Elliott, and obviously you know the PE environment real well. Yeah, how have you found things walking into what was a very well-established family-owned company to what is now PE-backed MRO? That's changing a little bit in a tough environment.
Yeah, it sure is. And there's nothing mythical and magical about private equity. I mean, it's not like private equity is the evil empire, and there's this perception that this outfit's going to gut the business and change the way we live, change the way we operate, and is just motivated by the almighty dollar and is going to be irrational about the business. And it's totally not the case. I think any well-run business just fits well in a PE environment. I don't really see those things as mutually exclusive. I mean, from my perspective, when you're transitioning, and truth be told, my predecessor was here for the transition. So I mean, I'm not like first one in the seat since the transaction, but it's pretty soon after. I mean, for me, the most important part is preserving the legacy of the business. I mean, when you've got a business that's been around for 85 years and has the kind of brand recognition, at least in the industry, that Elliott Aviation does, to me, the most important part is preserving that legacy, and keep the business connected to that, because that is really powerful. I've been in businesses before where I've had to kind of kickstart a brand, and it's so refreshing to be in an environment where you've got that brand recognition. The flying E is up on the building when our customers taxi by, they recognize it. And when we're at shows or out in the market, I don't have to say what we do when I'm talking in business aviation about Elliott. So. So really preserving the legacy, doing sound things for the business. I mean, that works in any environment, and certainly works in the PE environment. What I would say is you got to be really careful being overly myopic. I think that there's this, again, a mentality perhaps sometimes, when a new leader comes into the building and, or whatever, that or someone that comes with a PE background, there's a tendency to chase squirrels and say, well, this is kind of new. We can go do this. We can go do that. And I think it's really important to look at the legacy, truly understand what it is you're good at as a business, and focus on that which others don't do or don't do well. And, chasing squirrels is great, but, I have a 2-year-old puppy at home, and he loves chasing squirrels. I don't know that it's all fun and games until you're 8 feet up the tree and you finally snag one of those things and you're falling inverted to the ground.
Right.
Where first time you think about, well, now that I've caught this thing, what am I going to do with it? So I think that's good to keep that in mind. Stay connected to what you do well, and don't get too far over your skis.
Yeah. So let's just remind people about Elliott. You've got sites. So, obviously family owned, with Elliott, 85 years of history. Sites in Moline, Illinois, Dallas, Atlanta.
And a couple more in the upper Midwest, Flying Cloud, which is effectively Minneapolis, and Des Moines, Iowa.
That's right. Okay, good.
And Atlanta, Dallas, and then Moline is our headquarters where we have our large operation.
And the focus is on avionics, a lot of avionics, high value added avionics, interiors, and BizJet, King Air MRO.
Exactly. Small to medium cabin BizJet MRO. Exactly. Legacy business going back to, the 2 generations of Elliott ownership is deeply tied to the King Air. I mean, Elliott used to be synonymous with that. And, we had a a nickname back in the day that we were, king of the King Air. So, yeah, so that's kind of where our roots go back to. But yeah, so we do, yeah.
You just had a big victory too on the King Air.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, touching on the avionics piece, so the avionics market is very strong for us right now. So we've turned more King Airs into glass cockpits than any other MRO business out there. Not even close. I mean, we're double the next two of our competitors for Garmin G1000 install. So, we've got a lot of reps, a lot of experience with the Garmin product, and they recently just finalized this past late summer, early fall, the STC on the emergency auto land and auto throttle systems. So now what Garmin has done is they've brought technology that was kind of relegated to the high-end BizJet into the 200 series, King Airs. So it's a really amazing technology. I got to fly it, and on a demo flight with Garmin, their test pilot and their engineer. So I was in the right-hand seat for this demo. And I mean, I'll tell you, Craig, I mean, I got a decent amount of flying experience and a decent amount of jet time. And, I've operated, avionics in a 767 and in a KC-10, a modern Air Force aircraft with auto throttles, and it's every bit as good as those systems or better. I mean, you didn't experience that big pitch up and that instability as the auto throttles were surging. And my God, that emergency auto land thing, if you're up there flying with your family and you look up at the cockpit and the pilot's incapacitated, you can just unclip your seatbelt, walk up there, and there's a guarded switch that says emergency auto land, and you push it. And that aircraft goes into, like a 30-second analytics mode where regardless of where you are, what altitude, it looks at not so much the nearest airfields, but the nearest suitable airfield that has medical facilities, that has appropriate length of runway for the weather conditions, that kind of thing. And it identifies it based on fuel load on the aircraft, and it talks to ATC, sends out the emergency squawk, and makes all the radio calls, puts the thing into a descent, brings it down final approach, configures it, lands on center line, stops straight ahead on the runway. Again, doing all the radio calls, alerting the emergency response vehicles, and it stops on the center line and shuts down the engines after having configured the plane for landing, gear, flaps, all that stuff. So I saw it. It's amazing. I was in the seat. Yeah. Absolutely incredible.
I remember the first time I saw a glass cockpit. I was coming out of the Navy, E2 Hawkeyes with the most, ancient cockpit. And I look at the SPZ 8400 in the Gulfstream. I thought, wow, this is really cool. And now you look at that and you're like, that's dinosaur age compared to what, we're dinosaurs now. I think is so it's really cool to see all the technology and how it's, gone from, Global Express and Gulfstreams all the way down to King Airs and even Cirrus type aircraft. And it's there, it's affordable.
Zach, you think about it. You think about a B200. How many of those aircraft are out there flying? And it's in the thousands. There's a couple thousand that are target customers for Garmin and the install services that we provide. So so we are gearing up for that at all of our sites. Quite honestly, we're going to be doing avionics work at all 5 of our sites. Moline is kind of our headquarters where we do everything. I mean, we've been known for a long time with the quality of our paint and interiors work, so we obviously still have that. And here in Moline, along with the maintenance, but avionics is really driving the growth strategy for the business the next several years.
I think for a lot of people, but it's interesting for you. I mean, your locations obviously Dallas and Atlanta are pretty metropolitan, but you think about Moline and some of the other places you're at, your rural Midwest, or and people being the big topic of conversation right now. Pilots being one thing, but more importantly, skilled maintenance techs.
Exactly. I mean, that's really the biggest driver, and not just for Elliott. I mean, this is true across aviation writ large, but certainly in MRO is having the talented technicians. I mean, the pandemic wreaked havoc on this industry. And there's been so much turnover of talent. And so, attracting and retaining that talent is the number one aspect of having a good business in the MRO world for sure.
What are you doing? I mean, obviously culture, you're working to preserve Elliott's culture, maybe change it a little bit. But what are you doing to recruit? What's the big focus on recruiting talent? Are you growing it yourself? Are you working with trade schools? You just trying to bring it in? Is it, look, as you and I were talking about a couple of days ago, some mechanics are willing to change roles just for for very capricious reasons.
Yeah, I mean,
how do you create a culture where they want to stick around?
We humans are fickle. Well, we don't like being hot. We don't like being cold. We like being able to, my view, to not being cynical here. I mean, more, being more serious now. I mean, we like being part of something larger that's successful. And we like, my view is, we like to be part of a successful team that's driven with a singular focus and has my well-being in mind. So what we are doing here at Elliott is to create that culture, not of transition of, hey, new ownership or pandemic, or do I have to come to work every day, and all of those things that everyone's been dealing with, and just create a central culture of delivering a superior product for our customers and very much a focus on customer satisfaction. So we've got tons and tons of KPIs. I mean, I could tell you down to the minute what everyone in our workforce is doing every day, and we can slice and dice that data and do all this optimization and planning, forecasting, capacity work. But really what it comes down to is the biggest, most important KPI is, did that airplane get delivered on time or early? And did the person pick it up, leave with a smile on their face? And that is it's got to be part of the culture, because that's what ultimately makes my job as CEO, but also my job as a technician, fun, when we can connect what it is that we do every day to create that value for the customer. So, getting that connection is kind of how we're driving the culture. And when I get positive feedback on an engagement with a customer, I blast it out. It goes out in a newsletter, it goes out in an all hands meeting, or it goes out in an email. I said, hey, great job, team. Look at this feedback we got. And, that kind of starts, that flywheel, or that self-licking ice cream cone, if you will, of the culture. And then going back to your question, I mean, how, it's really hard to build it. So partnering with tech schools is predicated on you being in an environment where you've got one nearby. So not all our sites have that luxury. And part of the challenge there also is the time from flash to bang is a little bit protracted. So, when your thesis is about, getting prepared for growth that's right at your front door, you got to go out and find it. So absolutely, we have a portion of our strategy that's associated with development. We've got a big piece of the strategy that's about, bringing talented people in. And in each make different stratifications of talent. So, we need experienced, and supervisory type folks, but we also need, we need younger ones too. So we're putting our in the development and training piece, we're putting we're paying for it, and we're putting our youngest technicians through formal training. They're going to Garmin schools. They're learning how to become avionics professionals with the OEM. We're networking with those that are getting out of the military. Obviously, I've got a close linkage there. And providing those skill sets that are different than you would have experienced in the military, working on, on a B-200 is a little different than on F-16. So, it's not as simple as, not that it's simple to pull a box from an F-16, but, it just doesn't work like that.
No.
On a B-200. So, I think so. So you got to touch all those different pieces Craig. And I think, part of the issue is, there's a lot of us competing for the talent. So pay is way up, signing bonuses to get people to join the business. You got to sell the whole package. You got to sell the quality of life. You got to sell the community. You got to talk about how it's different working for an MRO than it is, you're working for an airline.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to call you up in the middle of Thanksgiving dinner to go, service, aircraft that are coming in at a commercial airport because you work for an airline. I mean, so there's that. You've really got to work all those angles.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, you talk about fickle. I mean, look, nobody's more fickle than the director of maintenance for an aircraft operator, Part 91 aircraft operator. They recommend to their boss, hey, we're taking it to Elliott or we're taking it to somewhere else. Literally their job could be on the line depending on how the maintenance event turns out. So the expectation of high touch, high caliber, high customer service is always there, and it's a little different. It's different than the airline environment where
exactly it is
much different than an airline environment.
Yep. So I mean, sometimes it's a challenge, other times it's a real benefit. I mean, I like the moat that a high mix, low volume, high touch kind of business creates because we're not turning out widgets, we're not working on the same airplane every day, and when you come to work for Elliott, you're getting that diversity of experiences. Every day is a different day. There's nothing mundane about your day at work because it every day is different, and there's a broad variety, and the mechanics that grow up in this environment are super skilled, and their talent is precious, and we got to look after it. So
what do you do to keep the airlines from coming in? Obviously the airlines are out there poaching, and they're like, hey, come on over, the water's warm, we got a great union job over here. And
exactly so
go.
I mean, the grass is always greener. I mean, not that our hangars aren't heated and we don't have those creature comforts, but and I'm not saying it happens at Elliott, but there's definitely people they'll badge flip for, hey, this hangar's air conditioned in the summer, I'm going to go work for the airline across the ramp during the summer months, and I'll come back to the MRO job in the in the winter or in those cooler temperatures. So I mean, sometimes that's what it works out like, but yeah, and it's challenging because the airlines aren't all there. There's definitely a quality of life aspect to being part of an MRO, and much more of a family environment. When you have a team that like we have at Elliott, that's really the biggest thing that that we say when we try to dissuade someone or just make it clear to them that the grass is not always greener on the other side of that ramp.
How about you? I mean, from your background, Air Force pilot, officer, commanding officer, you've been a senior leader in a couple other companies. First MRO, how did walking into an MRO, what took you off guard? What felt very comfortable? When you walked in, how did you evaluate kind of what needed to be done and the direction that you wanted to take things?
So on the positive side, just being around airplanes, being around the smell of fuel, it's in your blood, right? So with all those years in the Air Force and then some time in the commercial world too, it's that part's very, very comfortable. I didn't have to learn the language, so to speak, but also have some engineering in my background, so I can get fairly technical. But I think going into the MRO business and admitting right off the bat to everyone on the team is like, I'm not a wrench turner. So you're going to be able to fool me on some of those details. But understand how much I respect the work you do and how important it is to aviation. And one of my very first all hands meetings, I did a whole presentation on going back to the Wright brothers, how important mechanics were to the growth of aviation. And, I think that to me was really important to get that message out. What I saw when I first started was just a tremendous amount of operational and execution opportunities. MROs, are at least in their DNA, are not really designed around efficiency, especially when you're in a high mix environment and you have multiple aircraft types. It's not like we're a 737 MRO here, right? This is, like I mentioned, every day is a different day. So the biggest thing, given kind of my operations experience in a manufacturing environment and other commercial roles, is I just see lots of opportunity for standardization around work processes, documentation of how, work is done, parts kitting, things, really simple things is like, well, we should not be spending any time during the day using valuable technician hours hunting for parts. I should be able to reach out and grab the tools and parts I need from right where the aircraft is in the hangar. And so those are the kinds of things we're doing to really drive up our goal hour efficiency, so that not only is our labor being highly utilized in productive work, but that particular labor hour is done much more efficiently. So that's was the thing that kind of jumped off the screen, so to speak, at me when I first got into the role. Is I see lots and lots of opportunity there, and also we got to be more efficient. There's a lot of our competitors, a lot of others in the MRO world that would love to have our customers and love to do the work we do, and in today's day and age, you're only as good as your last maintenance event, your last engagement.
It's like everything. It's like anything in today's day and age, right? What'd you do for me yesterday?
Exactly. So, and that just links back to that, delight the customer bit. And so that's super important. So another thing we're working on behind the scenes is enhancing that customer experience and standardizing the way it's done at each of our sites. That was something too. And that really comes out of some private equity experience, having worked with businesses with multiple sites, is having that standardized experience for your customer really does enhance the brand when it's done properly. So that, there's an Elliott way that you're received, and an Elliott way your aircraft is delivered. I think so. I see that as opportunity. And
what took you off guard a little bit and said, wow, I didn't expect this?
I guess what took me off guard was just how many planes were working at once. I mean, I'm really hardwired to streamlining and improving operations. But I think my early days, I just asked for kind of a briefing, if you will, or visibility on all the aircraft projects that are in work. And I think at the time we had 42 just here in Moline. And we had a project management team that's not a fraction of that size, and they're managing 6 and 7 projects a piece. So I'm like, all right, how do we keep all this straight? There's so many details here, and you've got an aircraft that's coming in for a full avionics, new interior, and a paint job, and in the process of pulling out the interior, you find a little bit of corrosion, and that backs up the flow for the whole machine. And so I didn't have a full appreciation for that on day one. So that definitely, I'd say, caught me off guard. And, hearkening back to my days in engineering and project management, really had to kind of think about those fundamentals all over again and kind of use muscles I haven't for a little while. So we're investing quite a bit in the program project management, standing up a PMO function to not only accommodate the number of projects that we have going on simultaneously, but also, working with higher velocity so that we're touching every plane every day. A plane that's sitting in the hangar or on the ramp that's not being worked on any given day is not generating revenue, and it's not making a customer happy, right? So, I'd much rather have the same level of effort at a very high efficiency working on fewer aircraft and just get them turning more quickly. So I'd say that was probably the biggest eye opener for me was the backlog of work.
Was that a little bit of so when you and I talked back at MBAA, you had mentioned the one thing is, hey, look, let's get fewer airplanes in. Let's do it right. Let's do it quick. And, we'll get the assembly line going. per se a little bit better. Was there a little bit of disconnect now between your sales guys who are out there, your salespeople who are out there who are motivated to go sell, and your ops people who are, who now have to eat what the salespeople kill? Or, I mean, or was there an ability to find some harmony there?
It's such an amazing tension. It's a great problem for a CEO to have, is
Yeah.
having a very successful and proficient sales team that's keeping the pipeline fed. So it's a good problem to have. I'm knocking on my wood desk here. So to say there's a disconnect, no, but the big challenge is matching the capacity at each site with the opportunities that the sales team is bringing in. So again, not so much a monetary investment, but more of a calorie burn is going into our capacity planning, because that's another huge opportunity. And I imagine that's the case at every MRO, but making the capacity that we present to the sales team as looking out as far as we can and making it as accurate as possible and refining it every 4 hours kind of thing, so that it's, so that we're selling aircraft work that we can deliver on, as opposed to, being set up to fail before the
Right.
thing even shows up, because you don't have the capacity.
I mean, that's what kills you. You sell more than you can deliver, and that just kills your business.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so very healthy market right now. A lot of airplanes flying. Business aviation. How do you see? How do you see things moving? How do you see things? You see a steady pace of this for the next couple of years?
Yeah, I think, like we talked about, I think we're a little bit in kind of a Goldilocks phase right now. There's still lots of cash floating around in the economy, and people are willing to borrow money now to buy airplanes. So we're still seeing that. Aircraft, the resale prices are still super strong. I mean, we're seeing late model, 2-3-year-old aircraft going for more than they did when they were new.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's still that dynamic going on. Although it's starting to normalize a bit, I think in the next, year or two, you're going to start to see a normal depreciation scale on aircraft assets. It'll start to see kind of that 5 to 7% the annual depreciation start to kind of normalize again, and that's really what it's been historically. So I think you'll start to see that in the next year or two. There's still a huge demand that I see, and I'll put it in air quotes, kind of middle America, and I mean that geographically. It's a hard place to live and work, and be supported by the commercial air system. I mean, the reality is you want to fly to Moline on a commercial flight. Depending on where you are, it's 2 flights for sure, right? And how your connection is going to work out when it's 15 degrees below zero and 25 inches of snow on the ground here. So, so I mean, there's really a strong demand for the market acquiring and possessing the types of aircraft that we maintain. So I see that as really, really positive going forward. There's lots of aircraft out there that are right in our sweet spot that could really use a new interior, a fresh paint job, and of course, the latest technology in avionics. So I see the next 3 years plus for our business in the MRO world being pretty solid. But yeah.
Do you see some consolidation happening? I mean, obviously a lot of players. You guys are out there. You got some Standard Arrows out there. You got some other folks out there doing, everybody's fighting for a lot of the same resources. How do you see, can the industry support, all the players, or do you see a little bit of consolidation going on?
Yeah, I think there's going to be consolidation. There's probably 1 or 2 too many of us right now. And we are, we're really fighting for that talent. And I think those of us that have the talent and are not chasing too many of those squirrels that we don't know what we're going to do with when we catch them are the ones that are going to be successful, in my view. I'm being very careful, and not to say conservative. I don't want that to come out the wrong way, but I'm being very careful to not tread in markets with aircraft where we can't be competitive. Where our competitors are really good, I don't want to fight them where they're good. I want occupy our niche and be super, super good at it, super efficient at it, and develop brand loyalty and customer loyalty and make that the big asset for Elliott. It's hard to do what we do. My view is the bigger ones would love to perhaps do what we do, but they don't want to build what we do. So I don't know if that kind of answers your question.
Well, it's really hard. I mean, if you're a small MRO, you think about some of these small, really micro small MROs, they're fighting for the talent. So the labor costs are up. The insurance costs are up. It's a very capital intensive business. It's much like the small 135, 91 operators. They're being squeezed with hangar costs, with pilot costs, with everything else. I suspect the same thing is happening in the MRO space as well. Whereas, people with capital who can grow will grow, and everybody else will sort of muddle along.
Yeah, exactly. And there's kind of a threshold from a scale perspective that you have to get to truly leverage your fixed assets in this business. And if you're not able to get your MRO revenue above a point where you really start to leverage those assets, and you're just going to struggle and bounce off the bottom and really not really thrive. But it's honestly, it's a logarithmic curve, and this MRO is a super fun business when things are going well. And you get, it's kind of like that compounding curve, that you learn about when once you've saved money for long enough, then that, the rate at which your net worth builds really has a steep curve. And so the further you get away from just, managing your fixed costs, the further you get away from that, the steeper that curve gets. And that's my view. That's the strategy. That's the key to really driving outsized results in MRO.
Gotcha. How about your PE partners? I mean, their first acquisition in this space. What are they learning about it, and what are their expectations moving forward?
So expectations are high. They're a super group, super pragmatic about the company they bought. Really difficult timing. They bought a great asset, but didn't know that the pandemic was about to happen. So, so it's been a really challenging start, for their first, aviation ownership. And I've just said, I'm like, don't let this be the one that sours you on the industry. I said, it was a case of bad timing. This is a really good place. You've invested in a great business, and future super bright. It's really refreshing, breath of fresh air. The team at Summit Park is so supportive, and I'm not just saying this because this is, it's not, not a commercial for them, but the reality is we get the room to operate, which is, that's the ideal role, any ideal job for any CEO, having the degrees of freedom that you need to do the operations work. And they're great sounding boards with sound business practices. And, and it's not a huge firm, and, very accessible to us and to me. So, so it's been a tough start for them in their first couple years of ownership, but we're bending the curve pretty quickly right now. So they're about to be super happy.
I think that's anybody who invested, any private equity group who invested in any business in 2019, all of a sudden March of 2020 comes along and you're like, whoa, what did we just do? Right. I mean, that's, hey, look, it's kind of a wake up call for everybody, but I think ultimately you find it's a cool place to be and a cool business to be in.
Yeah, sure is.
Like I said,
when it's going well, it's a ton of fun. The calorie burn doesn't get any worse when you're doing well. That's the best part of it. When I talk about leverage, that's what I'm talking about. Just, putting all your fixed assets and all your energy and the culture that you're developing, you put all that to work, and it doesn't get harder when there's more work to be done, and when you get more efficient at it and things start clicking. It's a great spot to get to.
So I got you. Last thing. Obviously, fun environment. You got a lot of young team. You got, you're building it. What are you doing to teach your younger folks to come up and hey, look, don't be an hour employee. Be a leader. Be a leader. Be your mentor.
Yeah.
are your younger folks coming in with that type of mentality, or are you have to what are you doing to build that culture in that organization?
Some are, and to be perfectly transparent with you, that's something we screen for. So, what we're doing, what I like is creating this culture of accountability where, it's extreme ownership, not only for you as an individual, but for what it is that you do for the business every day. And the thing I talk about is, every time we walk through the front door, I want us to think about what is it that I'm going to do today that will raise the bar for my team and for the business, and what is it that I'm going to contribute, so extreme ownership of and being accountable for the results is what we're looking for. That is not a lot of that out there, honestly. I mean, it's something that we screen for, and I talk to every candidate. Certainly, I'm interviewing, they got an interview with me. I mean, there's very few jobs in this business that we hire into that they don't get to spend some time with me, either on the front end or shortly afterwards. And, I walk through kind of the overarching things that are in our strategic plan, and I talk about the culture. And the accountability piece is super important. So what are we doing to develop that? It's leading from the front, expecting our middle layer of leadership, our directors and supervisors, to carry the torch for that. They have to own it as well. And it's not just, hey, front office says I got to do this, but shift starts at 7, not 7:05. That's not the way I want to present it. It's when someone walks through the door 5 hours late for their shift, I want them to feel disappointed internally because they let their team down, and that the team self-polices that and creates an environment where you just don't want to do that because you're letting somebody down that counts on you. So, so that's kind of it's a culture piece, Craig, and that's not an overnight thing. And when you've got an industry with the kind of turnover that we have, it's winning one heart and one mind at a time and getting them deeply bought into the mission and vision.
Yeah, not that I'm gonna, not that I'm gonna throw rocks at a big airline manufacturer based in Seattle, but the culture of somewhere along the line, you see the companies out there who have created a culture of excellence, and you've seen some who have let it slide a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's everything in this guy. How do you convince somebody everything that you touch, somebody's life will depend on that down the road? And it might be your son, your daughter, your wife, whatever, who's on that airplane.
Exactly. It's a toll you got to pay, and ideally you pay the toll as you're going through the turnstile, so to speak, as opposed to getting the bill in the mail 60 days later, because, then it costs you $20. Cost you $2 to start if you do it up front. And then and then there's the whole sustaining piece too. Yeah, exactly. That's super, super important. Culture of accountability and safety and all the things this aviation industry just demands. You don't get away without it for long.
Every minute of every day. So, but it sounds like overall you're pretty optimistic about the direction things are going, the industry.
Yep.
The
super
technology.
Optimistic. Yep. It's a good spot to be in. Super happy where I landed here at Elliott. I'm very energized by the team I find here, and we're building a really special thing, from not from the ground up, but from the middle out, call it, I guess.
And all I'm doing now is I'm seeing the snow piles in the window behind you. Is it gonna warm up in Moline anytime soon?
So yeah, I really haven't. I've stopped studying the forecast. When you've got to double your temperature to get to -4. It's not all that motivating to look at first thing in the morning, but I'm told we're going to be into the 20s next week. So
it's winter. It'll be a heat wave.
Yeah. But you know what? It's all relative. And when you're in it with a team, hey, listen, I'm sitting in front of a webcam with Craig Pickin. There's guys servicing aircraft outside this window.
I know,
working out in the elements. So
no that's some dedication. I mean, literally, yeah. Hey, look, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to show up, and it's going to be -8, and I'm going to go, open up an airplane outside or go tow one into a hangar or whatever. And that just shows you the professionalism in the industry for sure.
It's what it takes, and so proud of the team we have here. It's a great spot.
Awesome. Well, hey, will you come back on, down the road when things warm up a little bit? You can tell us about your project, your
Would
progress.
love to. I'll let you decide that. You can decide whether I make it back or not for episode 2. This has been super enjoyable. I'm honored to be on it, Craig.
We're gonna have you
The
back.
world of what you're doing and in the aviation industry and the way you bring good talent to teams is absolutely needed. And
well, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, look, let's have you back on. Go stay warm today. Go take care of the team, and we'll have you back on soon.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it very much.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the latest edition of the Aerospace Executive Podcast. You can reach out to me directly, Craig at NorthstarESG.com, or check us out at www.northstaresg.com. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, or on YouTube. Just do a search for Aerospace Executive Podcast. Thanks again. I'm Craig Pittman.